Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to Torch Tales, Stories Behind the Hood. I'm your host, Frank Vargas, and if you are in the industry, you know exactly who this is. But I'm going to share a few things that I think I know about the guy before I say his name, and like I said, you guys will know who this is. So, Army veteran or?
Marine Corps.
Marine Corps veteran. Metal fabricator, welder fabricator, right? AWS section chair for the Orlando chapter.
Correct.
A brand new co-owner of a welding school in Orlando, Florida.
Yep.
Which we're going to get to the name and all of that. That's where we are right now. Part of AWS Weld Wednesdays podcast.
Yes.
Right? Host of the, see again, I love when they teach me because I have no clue what I'm doing. Now, dad, husband, bourbon cigar aficionado, buys beard, lotion and oil by the pallets, right?
55-gallon drums.
There you go, exactly. I mean, I can only hope and wish that someday I can get to that, but it's not happening. Jason Becker with Arc Junkies, which is the one that people know him the most. That's the one thing that now you have put your name out there because of Arc Junkies Podcast.
Yeah, that's kind of my main gig.
Which I gotta give you kudos because you have inspired people like me to do these kind of crazy things, and you put amazing content out there. And I think anyone that's in the industry knows who you are. Jason Becker, hola, gracias.
De nada.
All right, guys. We're going to try to, it's a lot. When I was reading some of his stuff, I mean, I couldn't keep up. I'm like, Jesus, I'm going to have to do a lot of homework about, about this guy. But before we get into any of that, let's go back like we usually do.
Okay.
So Jason Becker, as a kid, where is he growing up?
I grew up in Claremont, Florida. We moved down here in 1989.
Really? From
northeastern Ohio. So we moved down here when I was 6.
All right, so that was your parents' decision.
Yep.
They just said,
they just drugged me along with them.
Right? It's like, we're tired of the cold, we're just going to go to Florida.
Yep.
Like how most people do. So 89, you said?
Yep.
Now, 89, I'm assuming, because I know you're 41, 42.
41 now.
I only know that because you share that out there somewhere, so I'm not...
I just had a birthday.
Yeah, there you go. So happy birthday.
Thank you.
89, you're here. So you're 11, 10...
6.
God, I'm really bad at math. I'll cut this out probably. So you're 6. Did you get to experience the differences? Like you knew what was happening back then? You're like, oh my God, I like this, I hate this.
No, yeah, I definitely hated it. I did not want to move down to Florida. Like all my family was up in Ohio. I didn't know anything about Florida other than, Disney's down here.
Right.
But aside from that, my parents told me, oh yeah, we're going to, go live down there with Mickey Mouse and all that stuff. And like, I really didn't know who Mickey was. I knew what Disney was.
Well, that's a way to sell it to a kid.
Yeah. So, I mean, they kind of pitched it that way, and I hated it for years, but I used to go back during the summers up to northeastern Ohio.
Gotcha.
And especially with like middle school, early on in high school. Yeah. And I'd go up and bale hay with my uncle.
Oh, okay.
So that was kind of fun. I got to go back up and do the farming stuff. And,
there you go.
Still staying connected to my family and everything, and still have a separate life kind of down here.
Yeah, that's cool. And now you are here in middle school, high school. What are you into back then?
Back in high school, working. Honestly,
really?
I mean, yeah, like it's the same thing I am today. I was always working. Like I couldn't wait.
So were you exposed to welding in high school?
Yes. So I actually, I was about 15, and I worked construction with my dad over the summers, during high school. So right between my 9th and 10th grade year, I was out digging swimming pools with him. He'd run the excavator and I'd run the shovel.
Really?
Yeah, because I was pretty talented with my skills.
Yeah, right.
So I got put on the shovel, but
I
would shape the swimming pools. We got back to the yard one day, and my dad had to cut a piece of chain for something. I can't remember what it was. And so he grabs this big, thick, heavy-duty log chain or tie-down chain or whatever, and he grabs the oxyacetylene torch and he cuts this chain, and I'm like fascinated. I was like, he just
sparks and fire.
He just melted this, massive, thick chunk of steel chain with a torch. Like I didn't know anything about it at the time. So I just started asking him questions, and I was fascinated with this cutting process. So he starts telling me all about welding, and like I kind of knew my dad was a welder, but I'd never seen, that. He was kind of like a jack of all trades, master of none. And so the following year, I signed up for welding school.
In high school?
Yeah, that was 10th grade year.
So what high school was that?
West Orange High School.
Do they still offer welding?
Yeah.
Really?
It's so they have So if you go to West Orange High School, they have Westside Votech, which is a vocational technical college just down the road.
Okay.
So you're able to do dual enrollment. So
that's awesome.
You can take your electives as like welding or skilled trades over there.
Well, it's good to hear that they still have the program, so that's awesome. So now you're in high school, 17, 18, you come out of high school. What happens then?
I joined the Marine Corps.
All right, for how many years?
I did 4 years.
4 years. And did you kept working on hands-on trade while you were there? What did you do there?
I was lucky enough, I talked to my recruiter and he said, you pick 2 jobs and I guarantee you one. And I said, I'm going to need that in writing. He goes, I can't put it in writing. You got to trust me. And everybody I talked to, they're like, do not trust the recruiter. Everything,
right? They're just trying to get you there.
Everything they tell you, get it in writing. So I didn't have it in writing, but I said I want to be a combat engineer or I wanted to be a welder. And he said, okay, I'll guarantee you one of the 2 spots. It's a long story, but I ended up getting slated as a welder.
Really? So when you were there and they put you as a welder, do they put you through training? You know, how does that work while you're there?
So after boot camp, you go home. You get you get 2 weeks of leave. So I went home, did my leave, came back, went through Marine combat training up in North Carolina. After that, you go to your MOS school. So MOS school for welders at the time was up in Aberdeen, Maryland.
Okay. Now, I know that I forgot to mention this. CWI, CWE, WP.
WPQT1.
Right? You know, again, we'll touch on all that if you guys don't know. It takes a whole book in front of you to know what all that means, but we'll get to that. So now you come out 4 years later. You are in your early 20s.
Yep.
Right? What happens next?
I got out and I was like, well, you know, I need to, now that I'm not in the Marines anymore, I need to find a regular job. So I picked up the newspaper because that's how you would find a job back in 2005.
Oh, come on, you didn't have an iPhone?
No, there wasn't. I mean, they just came out with the
BlackBerry?
The G1.
Oh, that's right.
The first Google. So they you would still look through the newspaper to find a job, and this company was looking for an aluminum welder. And
oh, wow.
I said, I can do aluminum.
That's a good start.
Yeah, I was like, I could do aluminum spool gun. So I went in there and went to the resume in hand, all professional
of course,
and everything.
Yeah.
And
you just came out, so you're like,
And they're like, just get in the truck. You're pretty much hired. And I was like, okay, it was kind of like my.
But I did all this work,
my weld test was an 8-hour shift, So
test me, come on.
I jumped in the truck, we went out there and I hooked the spool gun up and did a bunch of welding and everything. We didn't even negotiated pay yet. And I was young, naive, didn't know anything about it. So go out there, work for the day and everything, and turns out that company does structural steel ironwork.
Okay.
They just needed somebody to go out there because none of their guys could do aluminum.
Gotcha.
So we went out and I installed I was with them for about 1.5 years. I did aluminum handrails and stairs stringers.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So we did that for Baldwin Park, which is an old decommissioned Navy base.
Yeah.
It's now like a really affluent area of Orlando.
Got it.
So I put up all the stairs and handrails over there, but in between installing those, I'd work with the other crews to go out there and erect steel buildings, bar joist, decking, bridging, all that good stuff.
Cool. So now you are almost 10 years into welding by that time,
just about.
Right? It's still very young and 10 years in. Now, how did you get involved with AWS? When did you know what CWI were they the company that said you need to go get your stuff?
No, so I left that company, went to work for another structural steel fabricator. Joined the Ironworkers Union.
Okay.
And while I was in college, I got offered, I was working on my construction management degree. My professor was like, hey, we're opening a welding program here over at Seminole State College. I'd love for you to apply. So I got into welding education and I was like, man, I know absolutely nothing about educating folks on welding. So I need resources.
Correct.
So I jumped on the Google. At this time, Google is very prevalent.
All right.
We're up and running now.
Yeah.
So I get on Google and I'm like, okay, what do I know about welding? I'm LincolnElectric.com, Miller.com, American Welding Society. I start getting into all these things, and I noticed that the American Welding Society has these things called section meetings.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, I can get my students involved with this, because
now what year was this?
This was 2015.
Okay, because I met you in 2018.
Yeah.
At I think it was a regional sectional here in Orlando.
Yes.
And then we saw each other again at the
all over the place.
Doral Symposium.
Yep, the leadership symposium.
Yeah. All right, so now you learn about AWS, there's regional section meetings, so that you get exposed to that.
Yep. So I start attending those section meetings, bringing my students up. At the time, it was the North Central Florida section of AWS.
So it's not the same chapter that you run now?
Not the same chapter that I run now. So
gotcha.
But it's a 2-hour trek for my students to get up there. And I was like, there's got to be a better way to get my students more involved. Why isn't there a section
Was there no Orlando chapter
there was no
here?
Orlando section.
So that's what it was. Gotcha.
So I got involved with them. JT Mahoney and all those guys, and they kind of brought me in, and I asked them, I was like, can we just set up a section here in Orlando so we don't have to
5 minutes from my house?
And he's like, oh yeah, that's no problem. And he links me up with Renda Kenny, and she just sends me this packet of requirements to stand up a section. Like, I've got to have 6 years of leadership. I got to have 250 supporting signatures. I've got to have letters of recommendation from local industry.
Really?
Like all this stuff. So because they don't just want to set up a section and not go nowhere.
Correct. Yeah.
So that's what we did. I linked up with some of my buddies that I'd met through AWS.
Gotcha.
Also some of my contacts within the industry, and we said, yeah, we're going to be the first 6 years of leadership for this section. And we started up getting all the signatures and everything. We put out petitions. And then we had our charter presentation. This was 2017. We stood up the Central Florida section of the American Welding Society.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, you see, guys, all it takes, you just got to want it bad enough. Now, would you say that opening that section, it helped you being exposed to more of the industry, some of the stuff that has come your way, had to do a lot with starting that journey there?
Oh, definitely. I mean, otherwise I would, I just have blinders on. I'd be stuck in my school teaching only what I knew.
Correct.
But the networking aspects through the AWS, I learned what a CWI is.
Gotcha.
So then I started to venture down that path along with the Certified Welding Educator.
Yeah.
So I took both of those simultaneously because you can sit for both exams at the same time.
So now let's break that a little. And guys, you know that I'll interrupt my guests. It's my show. I do what I want.
Yeah.
What's the main difference between a CWI and a CWE?
So CWI is Certified Welding Inspector, so I can actually go out and perform the work. CWE is Certified Welding Educator, so I'm certified through the AWS to teach welding. The only difference is with the CWE, I believe you don't take Part C. You don't take the code book portion.
Okay.
So you still use the measuring tools. You go through Part B, which is the hands-on practical.
So the class and the material itself is
class
very
material,
similar.
it's the same. I mean, they're side by side the whole way, except for if I just wanted to get my CWE, I don't have to take Part C, which is the code book.
Gotcha.
But like I said, if you're going to sit for the CWI exam, pay the extra fee and get that extra endorsement, right next to your name.
Okay, cool. So now you are here running the chapter, AWS, hands-on, you're doing the whole thing. Now, what happens while you're there that you start getting exposed to these so many other things? Especially, let's talk about Arc Junkies. How did that come about?
Oh, that's a long story. So, but it was with the AWS. I went down for the Ephraim Abrams with AWS. Brought me down for like an instructor type deal. Not the Instructors Institute. They just pulled a bunch of instructors together to kind of.
Pick their mind.
Like a brainstorming session, and I got to meet the owner of Weld.com.
Okay.
At the time, I didn't know what Weld.com was, but I ended up going to work for him for about 18 months while I was there.
I remember that.
I met Jimmy McKnight, who is the original host of the Arc Junkies podcast. We did the same event over in Houston, Texas with WeldTube.
Okay.
We went there with Weld.com, WeldTube, Arc Junkies. It was like a big deal.
Gotcha.
Pipe welding, all this stuff. So I got to meet Jimmy. And I gave him he was getting ready to take a CWI. So I'm giving him like all the pointers and the tips and the tricks, everything, because I just got done doing mine.
It's fresh.
It's fresh. So I'm like, here, write all this down. Like, these are the different resources.
Did you pass from the first? All right, good. All right.
It was rough.
Yeah, I've heard.
But I made it through.
Good for you.
That's how I met Jimmy. And then fast forward to 2020, I had left Weld.com because I missed that one-on-one instruction.
Gotcha.
Went back to Valencia College, and like right when COVID happened, like May or April, Jimmy reached out and he said, "Hey man, I'm getting out of the welding industry, and if I'm not going to be welding anymore, I don't need to host a welding podcast.
Correct.
I need somebody to take over as a show host." So I said, "Okay, I make connections. Like, me, I'm big on networking. I'll link you up with this guy with this guy."
Yeah.
So I was like, "Yeah, I'll see if I can find somebody." And he's like, "No,
so
you're
not
the guy."
You were not thinking about you.
I wasn't thinking about me.
And you didn't think he was talking about you.
I didn't think he was talking about me.
Gotcha.
Because I don't know anything about podcasting, editing, none of this stuff. So it was, YouTube University, right? So that helped me out through a lot. So he's like, "Yeah, I want you to do it." And I said, "Well,
can I get back to you?"
Yeah, I was like, "Let me think on that. How soon do you need an answer?" He's like, "It's no rush." So I thought about it for 2 weeks, and I was like, you know what? If I can be another resource for the folks in the industry, the young up-and-comers and stuff like that, I don't want to see this resource go away, because I was an avid listener of the Arc Junkies podcast at the time.
Yeah.
That was a resource for me to network and engage, and give me things to think about, to go back and then talk to my students and discuss different topics of welding. So I was like, you know what, let me do it. And I jumped on it.
And especially by now, because by now you've had so much experience, in so many different things. And again, you mentioned, Valencia College again, and touch a little bit on how did you become the welding instructor for Valencia?
So I got recruited. I was actually the welding instructor for Seminole State College at the time. And I get a phone call. This guy, Carl Harris, calls me up.
So you just get phone calls?
Just out of the blue.
People just call you.
He got my number. I'll tell you how he got my number off air. But he got my number from somebody, and he says, I heard you're a really good welding instructor. And I said, well, I like to think so.
Yeah.
He's like, we're setting up a program over here at Valencia College. I'd love, for you to come in.
They didn't have a program
They didn't have a program set up.
Oh.
They were, again, very similar to Seminole. We're thinking about putting together a program. We got some grant money and stuff.
Gotcha.
Would you like to come in and interview? It's a full-time position. I said, yeah, because Seminole, I was working part-time. And that was not working out well. I was getting ready to go back into ironwork because the pay difference was astronomical. And I had a young family to support, so I was like, okay, full-time position, benefits for myself and the family. Yeah, I'll do that. So I went over there in 2016 and sat their program up from the ground up. Built all the curriculum, set the lab up, hooked up all the machines.
And you were there, and then you left, and you came back.
I was there up until I left there 2019 and came back 2020.
Gotcha. And now, at that time, you still had no idea that you were going to end up having a welding school, or was that?
Yeah, I had no idea at the time.
So you were not even thinking about a welding school yet, right?
No, I was happy right where I was.
So we'll get to that. Now you got Arc Junkies. You're doing testing, right?
Yep.
For companies, local companies. Well, not even local companies.
Yeah, procedure development, process improvement, welding consultations. If they run into technical issues, they can't figure out what's going on, I'll go out there and I'll help them, walk them through their machines, or get their guys skilled up, or do on-site training, on-site testing, develop procedures.
And you still do that, right?
I still do that.
Right, that's part of the big paycheck.
Yeah.
And that's awesome. You got to
credentials help.
Right, there you go. Now, here you are, and you are again growing and growing without even knowing. Organically, your name, keeps popping up everywhere for many different things, which is kudos to you, because it only speaks, to what you bring into the table. You start getting a bigger role with AWS, and they're trusting you more to do certain things for them, like the Wednesday.
Yeah, Weld Wednesdays with AWS.
Wednesdays, right?
Yep.
So how did that come about? Was that your idea? Was that their idea?
That was their idea.
Really?
As soon as I took over the podcast, probably within a month or 2 months of taking it over, AWS reached out to me and they're like, hey, we would love to link up with you and do a completely separate episode called Weld Wednesdays with AWS to kind of highlight, promote.
So they had the name, everything was there? Yeah.
I mean, that was their marketing company, or their marketing division. So, I mean, they kind of had an idea what they wanted to do, but they said, yeah, we want to call shut that off.
Yeah. Well, you said it before the thing. Something was going to go off. So, guys, this is what happens when you do an interview at a welding school. There's things happening in the background. So the air compressor just turned on. And hey, it doesn't get more blue collar than that, right? Yeah. Welcome back, Jason. Nice to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
Now, AWS Weld Wednesdays. Yep. Now you are going to FabTech even more, representing yourself, representing AWS and many other venues throughout the US and even abroad, Canada and so on, right? Was that also part of the plan from the beginning, or that's also started happening organically?
That just started happening organically. So I did the Weld Wednesdays for the first year, and that's all it was just Weld Wednesdays with AWS. With an appearance at FabTech, I do a couple shows or a couple recordings right there at the AWS booth at FabTech. I did that for 2 years, and now I've got like my own plan going into FabTech this year. But I'm also doing some episodes for the AWS. We got the Arcs and Ales after party. We got the Arc Stars meet and greet that's happening on Tuesday. I'm not sure when this is going to air, but I'm still doing a lot of work with AWS. But I also kind of have my own agenda going into FabTech this year. Gotcha,
that's awesome. So where are we right now?
So right now we're in Orlando, Florida. We're at Underground Metalworks, which is mine and my business partner's new endeavor.
All right. Which is a welding school.
Welding, testing, and training.
Okay. And
short term.
And I'll do a little video and I'll show you guys at the end so you guys see exactly how cool this place is. Now, you said earlier that at some point you were not even thinking about a welding school or being part of one, especially owning one. Mm-hmm. When did that bug hit you, and how did that come about?
While I was working, we had some management changes at the school, and was kind of butting heads with the new director.
I remember that, yeah.
And I've realized that I've just got...
it's just different opinions.
Yeah, I've got a problem with authority, and I have a low tolerance for BS. So I was like, let me just go out and do this on my own. You know, like, why? I don't need somebody else to tell me how to do my job just because they have a fancy degree. Like,
correct.
I know welding.
Yeah.
You're not going to tell me.
I might not know the politics behind.
Yeah,
right?
But if you've never struck an arc, or like, don't tell me how to teach welding. Don't tell me how to run my program. So I decided I'd be better off doing it on my own. So that's exactly what I did.
So at that time, you went through those issues, and your wheel's spinning, and you're like, you know what? I could do this on my own.
Yep.
Maybe I could open a welding school. And so that idea is already there.
Yep.
And you haven't talked to anyone else yet. Your partner or mutual friend.
Not yet.
That we're going to get to it. Not yet.
We'll get to it. But no, I mean, at the time I was like, you know what, I didn't leave to start my own welding school. I left to just continue doing Arc Junkies, welding consultations, testing, training, stuff like that. And then one of my former students, who was a colleague of mine, we decided, we're like, let's just open up our own welding school. And that's kind of what we did. So we kind of hemmed and hawed from about August of 2022 up until January, I'd say probably January 2023.
Yeah.
And then we're like, all right, let's get serious about this. So we found this space.
Really?
And we came in here and started cleaning it out. And I got a call from one of my good friends at AWS member, Stephanie Hoffman.
Correct.
And she said, hey, I'm getting ready to sell my school because I've got so many things going on right now. Would you be interested in buying it? I know you're planning on setting up your own short-term welding school.
Talk about being in the right place at the right time.
Oh, yeah,
because you shared this story before, but I want people to hear this as well. So she was not in the cards.
No.
When it came to you guys opening this particular place here.
No, she actually flew me up the year before and was like, hey, you know, if you're planning on doing something like this, here's how. This is
what it takes.
Here's some things you should think about. Here's what it takes.
Gotcha.
Because I'd had the kind of idea in my mind, but like I said, I didn't leave to do it.
Yeah, this was like a turn-on key almost.
Yeah,
So now she makes that call. She tells you, and you go.
I called up my buddy Rob, and I was like, hey, dude, my friend Stephanie's got a turnkey solution. Like, we don't have to outsource
figure things out.
The tables, the machines, everything's there.
Yeah.
And so he's like, well, let's go take a look.
Yeah.
You know, so we flew up to Forked River, New Jersey, and went and looked at her facility and all the equipment, and you know, we talked everything over and made an agreement, and we came back here and started getting things into high gear.
Yeah.
And then went back up in July. Yeah, early July, late June, early July. She had a shipping container that she was using for storage, and
which is outside.
It's right outside. It's a 40-foot shipping container, but everything in her shop fit inside of that shipping container. When we closed the doors, and like all this equipment had never been in this shipping container before. It was like divine intervention. It was just perfect. When you close the door, where the paint scrapes on the line, you know, so you can tell where the edge of the door actually is.
Correct.
The equipment and everything was packed right up to that line.
Really?
We had just enough space to close the doors and lock it.
So all of this equipment had never been in it.
Never been in it.
And somehow it worked.
We played Tetris for about a day and a half, getting everything finagled and packed into this 40-foot shipping container.
So you guys trailer the whole thing here. And when was the official launch of the school?
We opened July 17th with our first week-long comprehensive class.
Really? So now that you had the idea, this is what I want to do, you know, you and your partner, you guys open. What's the one thing that you say, oh, I didn't think this was going to be that way? Whether it got easier or it just got harder? Like what are the things that you would run into and whoa?
Honestly, for about 2 months, I'd say I was completely stressed out just because, you know, like we're trying to make everything happen here. I'm still working with clients over here. I'm still running the podcast, and everything with this school it fell into place. And I kept thinking like something's going to happen. Something's going to go wrong. we're going to lose the shipping container, or the deal's going to fall through, or something's going to happen with the facility, or something's going to
right.
get.
Yeah, it's just too easy so far.
It's too easy, and the whole thing was just a seamless transition.
Really?
I mean, from like the planning stages, setting up this facility, going up, picking up the container, loading it, shipping it down, offloading it, packing everything out, everything went according to plan, except for our front door.
Yeah?
It's a difference in elevation from the outside to the inside, so we had to build a staircase. Not a big deal.
All right, hey, it's all good. Is this the same square footage or close enough to what Steph had?
I think this one's a little bit bigger. This one's 2,400, and I think she had 1,700 or 1,800 square feet.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's definitely a nice layout. I love the layout, and like I said, I'll show you guys that later. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years of school, personal, Arc Junkies, everything else? Like, are you one of those guys that you set short, long goals, or you kind of like...
I don't anymore. I used to.
Really? That surprises me.
If you think about it, when I started off welding at age 15 in high school, I thought, I was going to be a welder the rest of my life. I mean, I still am.
Correct.
I never considered getting into education. And then when Weld.com approached me with, being a host for their YouTube channel, never in a million years would I have ever thought that. And then when Jimmy passed over the podcast to me, I would have never thought I'd be a podcast host. Same thing with taking over Underground Metalworks.
Do you think that was the biggest catalyst, becoming the full-time host of Arc Junkies?
I think it gave me leverage to negotiate my separation.
Gotcha.
It put me in a better spot to say, I don't need this.
Yeah.
I can make it on my own.
That's pretty cool. I know you're married.
Yep.
And you have how many kids?
2 kids.
2 kids. Do they even know what welding is? Are they into?
They do. They're not really into it. My son, it's too hot. I mean, because I don't have air conditioning at the house shop. But he's like into gaming and stuff like that. My daughter, if I go out in the garage and start tinkering with something, she just starts going. If I'm working with wood, she'll go grab scrap wood, and then if I'm working with metal, she'll go grab scrap metal. Like she wants to build, and she's crafty.
Gotcha.
She's 11, so usually if I can get out in the garage and do something, she wants to be right there with me.
So she's 11 and your son is?
14.
14. All right, cool. Oh, so you started early too.
Yeah.
Cool. Now, the one main important question about this whole show, how long have you been growing your beard? And what do you do to take care? Because I had a conversation with a mutual friend, and again, I'm getting pointers if I ever eventually want to go that route. So what do you do?
So I'll tell you the story behind the beard.
Okay, let's start there.
So before I started this going down the path of the CWI, or going to class to take the exam, I was studying at home. And I was like, you know what, I'm not gonna shave. I'm not gonna bother with shaving. I don't wanna get up early or shave before I go to bed. I'll just grow it out, and I won't shave it until I get the results back from my CWI exam.
Okay.
That was in 2017. And after I got the results, I passed. I was like, you know what? This thing's it's growing on me. It's growing on me, literally and figuratively. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to keep it. During COVID, I was out running the whole time, riding my bicycle and all that, because we were shut down. 97 days I wasn't teaching.
You told me this.
So the beard was just all over. So I trimmed it down to 1 inch, and then I was like, you know what? I don't like it. I'm going to grow it back out. And I just kept growing it ever since. So 2020. So this is 3 years in the making.
Really? So you maintain it, you do oils, you do...
Yeah, you just use beard oils. Actually, my wife's got this coconut oil conditioner or whatever for her hair.
Oh, really?
And I didn't have beard oil one day. And I was like, let me try this stuff out. And I put that on there, that's all I use now. I don't use the regular expensive, beard oils. I don't think they do as good of a job.
Yeah. All right, well, there you have it. I don't know what it is with the welding industry, but as you know, there's many welders, many instructors out there that they just love the whole ZZ Top. Yeah. I get it. Going back to the schools really quick, how many setups do you have here?
We have 5 stations.
5 stations. And what do you guys do from A to Z?
So it depends.
So I come in, I have nothing, I don't even know what a lighter does. Where do I start?
Well, we basically we kind of figure out what your schedule and what your needs are and what you want to learn.
Okay.
Obviously, if you come in, you've got some idea of what you want to learn. What we typically offer is a 1-week comprehensive class where we'll cover stick, MIG, TIG, and flux core. We do a weekend TIG class and a weekend MIG class, and then we have an evening class that runs for 6 weeks, 2 nights a week, and that's pretty much a mirrored image of the week-long comprehensive. It's just divided up over 6 weeks.
Gotcha. And that's when someone at least has a little bit of an idea of, hey, I might be getting this job doing this, so I want to kind of learn this.
Or just.
But what about if I just come in and I go, where should I start if I want to start getting paid in the next 2-3 months on anything welding, what do you recommend?
I would recommend taking either the weekend MIG or weekend TIG because it's focused on one specific process.
Okay.
And you can take that class multiple times. So I don't just teach the basics every single time.
Gotcha.
You know, and that's the great thing about having 5 setups is I can have one student on stick, one on flux core, one on MIG, one on TIG, and I can work independently one-on-one with each student to their strengths. You know, so if you have absolutely no experience, I can work with you and show you the fundamentals and the basics, but then I can go over to the next table and help somebody that might be preparing for
Correct.
a job or they need to pass a certification for a specific employer or a weld entrance exam. I can go over there and get them dialed in with that as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And where can people find this information?
They can go to underground-metalworks.com or they can look us up on Instagram, Underground Metalworks.
Cool. That's awesome. Well, brother, I just got to say thank you because I remember when I met you in 2018, you know, just like most of us, we were kind of starting certain things in our lives, but then I see people like you, Steph, and quite a few others where they have just gone bam. So it's very gratifying to see the growth on people that you know. It just makes you feel good because, you know, all you want is for people to get better and become better at what they do while supporting others. And I think that you do that and you do a hell of a job doing that. Because everybody says that about this guy right here, not me. Don't take my word for it. I don't know what I'm doing. But when you ask about Jason Becker out there, all you hear is good things. Now, how much money you're giving them? Have no clue, but it's working. So keep it up. And thank you for the support, brother.
I appreciate it.
You got it.
Thanks for coming out.
Well, guys, there you go. Just please, I hope you learned something from this guy right here. I know I did. I'll see you next time with somebody else, somewhere else. Thank you for watching Torch Tales. All right.